It was the highest compliment Bill could give. We had our first ally. Our next visit was to Claire, who lived across the street. Claire was a 5th grade teacher at the local elementary school. She was younger, maybe in her early 30s, and she had 2 kids of her own. We knew she was a good person, the kind who organized the neighborhood block party every summer. We also knew she was terrified of confrontation. We met her as she was getting her mail. We told her the same story, focusing on what happened at the school with the principal folding under Karen's pressure. That part hit her hard. As a teacher, she believed in the system. She believed in protecting kids. Hearing how it had been so easily corrupted visibly angered her. "I'm not surprised," she said, her voice tight with frustration. "Karen Lawson is the head of the PTA too. Her influence is everywhere. She gets whatever she wants. New equipment for the sports teams her son is on, while the arts and music programs get their budgets slashed. Everyone's afraid to cross her." She told us about other parents who had run afoul of Karen, people who had questioned her decisions and found their kid suddenly benched from a team or overlooked for an academic award. It was a pattern of vindictive, manipulative behavior that extended far beyond the HOA. "I want to help," Claire said, her fear battling with her conscience. "But I'm worried about my job, about my kids." "We're not asking you to storm the castle," Sam told her gently. "We're just asking for information. You know the people here, you know the kids, you know who else has been pushed around by her. Just need to know we're not alone." That was something Claire could do. She could talk to people quietly. She could gauge the mood of the community. She became our intelligence officer, our ear to the ground. Within a few days, she came back to us with a list of 3 other families who had been systematically harassed by Karen with fines and threats. An elderly couple who were cited for their bird feeder. A young family who were told their children's playset was an unapproved structure. They were all angry, but they were all afraid to speak up alone. Suddenly, we weren't just a single household fighting back. We were a network, a small, secret resistance movement brewing in the heart of suburbia. Bill was our grizzled veteran, our moral anchor. Claire was our communications hub, our link to the wider community. And Sam and I were the command center, processing the intelligence and planning the next move. We had a small army now. Bill had the ground truth from years of observation. Claire had the institutional knowledge of the school and the social networks of the neighborhood. Sam had the tech, the strategy, and the mountain of evidence. All we needed now was the final, undeniable piece of the puzzle. The smoking gun that would incriminate not just the system, but the individuals. And thanks to his own bottomless arrogance, Karen Lawson's own son was about to hand it to us on a silver platter. The key to any successful operation is good intelligence. Our little band of suburban rebels had established a solid network. Bill knew the history, Claire knew the people, and Sam had the electronic eyes and ears. The weak point in Karen's fortress was, without a doubt, her son. Tyler was arrogant, impulsive, and, like most teenagers, he lived his life online. We knew he was bragging about what he did. We just had to prove it. Claire was our way in. As a teacher, she understood the social dynamics. The file grew every single day. It was a living document, a beautiful, damning collection of digital proof that painted a clear picture of abuse of power, harassment, and very likely criminal conspiracy and fraud. Sam had built a digital prison for Karen Lawson. And Karen had no idea she was already inside it. The evidence was overwhelming. But evidence is only useful if you have someone to show it to a judge. A jury, or, in our case, a neighborhood that was scared into silence. We had the what, we had the how. Now we needed the who. We needed allies, and it was time to go recruiting. Building a case in isolation is one thing. Building a movement is another. We had a mountain of digital evidence, a fortress of facts, but we were still just one family against a corrupt system, however small and petty that system might be. To take on Karen Lawson and the machine she controlled, we needed people. We needed our neighbors to stop looking away and start looking at the problem with us. Sam had built the armory. Now I had to go find the soldiers. Our first stop was Bill's house, right next door. Bill was a retired Marine, a Vietnam vet who spent most of his days in his garden or his workshop. He was quiet, gruff, and had a handshake that could crush a coconut. He'd seen the whole thing with Lily from his front window. He'd given us a grim, knowing nod that day, but hadn't said a word. I figured he was the perfect place to start. He understood chain of command, and he hated bullies. I found him in his garage, sharpening a set of chisels. The place smelled of sawdust and old coffee. I didn't beat around the bush. I laid it all out. The incident with Lily, the pressure at the school, the flood of bogus fines, the late-night visit from the fake compliance officers. I told him we weren't just angry. We were building a case. Bill listened patiently, not saying a word, his eyes focused on the whetstone in front of him. When I was finished, he wiped the chisel clean on a soft cloth and inspected the edge. "Karen Lawson," he said, his voice a low rumble. "She's a piece of work. Been running this place like her own private fiefdom for years." He told me about the time he'd been fined. $200 because the American flag he flew from his porch was, according to Karen, 1 inch too wide for the approved pole diameter. He fought it. He lost. He'd seen her target other families, to anyone who questioned her authority, anyone who voted against her proposals at the HOA meetings. "She's got a little crew on the board," he explained. "They all vote together. They approve her contracts. They back her plays. Most folks are too scared or too busy to fight back. They just pay the fine and hope she moves on to someone else." "We're not going to pay and hope," I said. "We're going to fight. But we need help. We need people who are willing to stand up." He looked at me, his gaze steady. "What do you need?" "For now, just to know you're with us. To be a witness if we need one. To talk to other people you trust." Bill nodded slowly. "You got it," he said. "She picked a fight with the wrong family." He looked over at my house. "Your wife. She's Army, right?" "I can tell. She's got that look. The calm kind of dangerous." But the crown jewel of her setup was the drone. It was a small, quiet, consumer-grade quadcopter, the kind people use to take vacation videos. But in Sam's hands, it became a strategic reconnaissance asset. Every morning, just after dawn, she'd launch it from our backyard. It would climb to 400 feet, the legal ceiling, and perform a slow, sweeping orbit of the neighborhood. From that altitude, it was nearly invisible and silent. We filmed streets and common areas only under 400 feet. No backyard peeking. Video only, no audio recording. But its 4,000 camera could zoom in with astonishing clarity. She wasn't spying on our neighbors. She was documenting the patterns of the HOA's contracted services, the lawn care company, the compliance officers, and, of course, the movements of Karen Lawson herself. My role in all of this was data management. Every day, Sam would download hours of footage. It was my job to watch it, log it, and tag anything of interest. It was the most boring and the most fascinating thing I'd ever done. I watched hours of uneventful suburban life. People walking their dogs, kids riding bikes, the mailman making his rounds. But in between the mundane, there were gems. By noon, we had timestamps, plates, faces, clean. We captured footage of the lawn care company, the one owned by Karen's brother-in-law, spending a grand total of 15 minutes maintaining the vast common area at the neighborhood entrance. A job for which the HOA was billed thousands of dollars a month. We captured Karen's compliance officers, the same 2 goons from our porch driving around the neighborhood, taking pictures of some houses while completely ignoring identical violations at the homes of her friends on the board. We had video of one of them deliberately knocking over a resident's trash can to photograph the resulting litter. Sam pieced it all together into a stunning montage of corruption and petty tyranny. She created timelines. She cross-referenced the video footage with the violation notices we were still receiving. Here was a video of our lawn being mowed on Tuesday. Here was the violation notice we received on Wednesday. It's complete with the bogus photo of the single blade of grass claiming it was too high. The evidence was irrefutable. She created a case file that was meticulous, organized. And absolutely damning, the centerpiece of the presentation was the footage from the night of the porch incident. She edited it together from 3 different angles. The doorbell cam with its clear audio of the entire exchange. The hidden bush cam, which captured them arriving and fleeing and got a perfect shot of the license plate. And the dash cam from her car across the street, which showed the whole scene from a distance, establishing their presence and their hurried departure. It was a story told in pixels and timestamps, and it left no room for doubt. Every clip carried visible clocks, date stamps, and continuous angles. She even created a section for what she called pattern of life, using the drone footage and the street-facing cameras. She mapped Karen's daily routine. When she left, when she came home, who visited her. It felt a little creepy, I'll admit. But as Sam explained it, you don't just learn about your enemy. You learn their habits. You learn their blind spots. You learn what they value and who they trust. The effect was instantaneous. Panic set in. The man who had planted the bag snatched it back up. They practically fell over each other, scrambling off the porch. They didn't walk back to their van. They ran. We watched them go. The street fell silent again. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My heart was pounding. That was ... I started. But I couldn't find the right word. Predictable, Sam finished for me. She was already back at her laptop, saving the video file from the doorbell camera. She pulled up another window, which showed footage from a new camera she'd hidden in the bushes, giving a perfect view of their van and its license plate. She typed the plate number into a search engine. They made a mistake, she said, a small, grim smile on her face. They thought we were civilians. The men were amateurs. The van was registered to a shell corporation that, after a few minutes of digging, Sam linked to a landscaping company that held the exclusive and wildly overpriced contract for the neighborhood's common areas, a contract awarded by Karen Lawson. It was all connected. This wasn't just a personal vendetta anymore. This was a conspiracy. A cheap, poorly executed one, but a conspiracy nonetheless. They ran the second the lights hit, I said. Sam just smiled, looking at the screen full of video files. They're predictable, she said again. Time to build the digital fence. The night the goons came to our porch was a turning point. For Karen, it was an escalation. For Sam, it was a gift. It was a data point. It confirmed her hypothesis. Our opponent was clumsy, arrogant, and operating with a false sense of security. The next morning, Sam didn't seem angry. She seemed energized. She had a project. She went into what I call her mission mode. The kitchen table became a command center. Laptops, tablets, and spools of wiring appeared. Coffee was brewed in industrial quantities. A passive defense isn't enough, she declared. Pointing at a schematic of our house she'd drawn on a whiteboard, we need active collection. We need to control the information space. I just nodded and made sure the coffee pot was full. When Sam talks like that, my job is to provide logistical support and stay out of the way. The digital fence she envisioned was a work of art. It was a multi-layered surveillance network that would have made a spy agency proud. The doorbell camera was just the beginning, a simple sentry post. Now she was fortifying the entire perimeter. She ordered 4 more high-definition, night vision-capable cameras. She didn't mount them in obvious places under the eaves, that's what amateurs do. Instead, she concealed them. One was disguised as a birdhouse. Another was tucked into the dense foliage of a holly bush. A third was mounted inside the garage with a tiny pinhole view of the entire street. The fourth was a dash camera hardwired into her car, which was always parked facing the Lawson house. It recorded 24/7 on a continuous loop. It was just after 11 o'clock on a Wednesday night. The house was quiet. Lily was asleep upstairs, dreaming of unicorns and playgrounds, blissfully unaware of the silent war being waged downstairs. I was reading in the living room, and Sam was at the kitchen table, reviewing satellite images of our property line on her laptop. It sounds insane, I know, but that's Sam. When she feels a threat, she prepares a battle space. She had already mapped out every blind spot, every potential approach to our house. To her, this was just a problem set, a mission with clearly defined objectives. The first sign of trouble was a flicker. The motion-activated floodlight over our garage snapped on, bathing the driveway in harsh white light. I looked up from my book. Sam was already on her feet, moving silently to the front window, peering through a crack in the blinds. I joined her. A dark, unmarked van was parked across the street. Not a commercial van, more like a conversion van from the 90s. The kind with no windows in the back. The kind you see in movies right before something bad happens. Two men got out. They were big. Not bodybuilder big, but thick, soft big. They wore dark jackets with a small, generic-looking security logo embroidered on the chest. They looked less like professional security and more like bouncers from a rundown nightclub. They walked up our driveway with a purpose. One of them was carrying a clipboard, a flimsy prop in the dead of night. The other was carrying a small canvas bag. My stomach tightened. This was different. This wasn't a letter in the mail. This was a physical presence, an invasion. Who the hell are they? I whispered. Compliance officers, Sam said, her voice a low murmur. She didn't sound scared. She sounded interested. She'd already pulled up her phone, which was linked to the doorbell camera she'd installed the week before. We had a crystal-clear high-definition view of our front porch. The two men stepped onto the porch. They didn't ring the bell. They didn't knock. They just stood there for a moment, their eyes scanning the front of the house. The one with the bag knelt, his back to the camera, and started fiddling with something near our potted plant. He's planting something, I said. The realization dawning on me. A plastic bag of white granules? Unknown. We never touched it. The camera saw everything. Obviously staged something they could discover tomorrow during an inspection and call the cops on us. It was a classic escalation tactic. Discredit the target, make them look like criminals. Sam just nodded. She tapped a button on her phone. Showtime, she whispered suddenly. The front porch was blasted with light. Sam had wired the porch lights to a separate remote-controlled switch. They were brighter than the standard bulbs, designed to wash out shadows and faces. The two men froze, caught like deer in the headlights. They squinted, raising their hands to shield their eyes. Then Sam's voice crackled through the doorbell speaker. It wasn't her normal voice. It was amplified, metallic, and utterly devoid of emotion. You are on private property. You are being recorded by multiple high-resolution cameras. State your names and your purpose. The two goons were completely thrown. They looked at each other, confused. The one with the clipboard finally spoke, his voice shaky. We're from the HOA Compliance Division. We're investigating a report. There is no compliance division that operates at this hour. Sam's voice boomed from the speaker. Per 2.3D HOA inspections occur during daylight hours only. The object you have placed behind the planter has been recorded. The license plate of your vehicle has been recorded. The local police department has been notified of a potential trespassing and criminal mischief incident in progress at this address. You have 10 seconds to vacate the premises before a formal complaint is filed. It was a bluff, but a beautiful one. She hadn't called the cops. Not yet. She didn't need to. Sam looked at it over my shoulder. She didn't say anything. She just took the letter, went to her desk, and opened a new folder on her computer. She labeled it HOA. Then she went into the garage, got a tape measure, and spent the next 10 minutes meticulously measuring our lawn in 10 different spots. She took pictures. The average height was 2.8 inches. She saved the photos to the folder. Documentation, she said. Always start with documentation. That was just the beginning. The blitz had started. A new letter arrived every other day. We received a fine for our garden hose being visibly coiled in a non-uniform manner. The accompanying photo looked like a crime scene investigation of a very uninteresting snake. My personal favorite was the violation for unapproved landscape ornamentation. The ornament in question, small ceramic gnome Lily had painted in art class. It was tucked away behind a rose bush. Someone had to have physically walked onto our property and peered into our garden bed to even see it. The fine was $50. I wanted to pay it in pennies. Sam just took a picture of the gnome, printed a copy of the HOA rulebook section on decorations, which was conveniently vaganed, added it to the file. The letters were designed to needle us, to wear us down. A war of 1,000 paper cuts. Karen Lawson was using the full bureaucratic weight of the HOA as her personal weapon. She was turning our quiet suburban dream into a Kafkaesque nightmare. Every trip to the mailbox was filled with a low-grade dread. What fresh nonsense would we find today? What imaginary infraction had we committed in our sleep? It was harassment, pure and simple. We paid the fines, but we sent them with registered letters disputing the claims and including our own photographic evidence. We knew it wouldn't matter to Karen, but it created a paper trail. Sam was building a case, piece by methodical piece. She read the HOA bylaws from cover to cover, highlighting sections, making notes. She was treating it like an enemy combatant's field manual, learning their rules of engagement so she could use them against them. The financial sting was annoying, but manageable. The real damage was the feeling of being watched, of being constantly judged by a hostile, unseen eye. We started to feel like prisoners in our own home. I'd find myself glancing out the windows. Checking the street for Karen's white SUV, we were living under a petty dictatorship, and the dictator lived just 3 houses down. Most of our neighbors kept their heads down. They'd give us sympathetic looks, a sad little wave, but no one wanted to get caught in the crossfire. They had their own lawns to worry about. They knew how Karen operated. She ruled through intimidation and the selective enforcement of 1,000 meaningless rules. Cross her, and you'd soon find yourself fined for the color of your welcome mat or the alignment of your window shutters. The campaign of nuisance fines continued for 3 weeks. It was a constant, low-level stress. We were drowning in paper. And then one night the nature of the attack changed. It escalated. The paper cuts were annoying, a sign of her pettiness and her willingness to abuse her power. But then Karen sent her foot soldiers, her own little private security force, to our house after dark. She escalated from petty mail and bogus photos to a direct physical threat on our own front porch. The game had changed, and she had no idea how prepared we were to play. Furthermore, Karen continued, turning back to the principal, my husband and I are the primary sponsors for the new scoreboard on the football field. We believe in supporting our school's athletic programs. And as PTA chair, I help lead every major fundraiser programs that teach boys discipline and character. She let the words hang in the air. It wasn't a statement. It was a threat. A reminder of her power, her influence, her financial leverage. Don't mess with my son, or the funding for your precious scoreboard might just dry up, Mr. Henderson wilted. I could practically see his spine dissolve. He nodded, his eyes fixed on the grain of his desk. Yes, Mrs. Lawson, we appreciate your family's generosity. He closed the files. The case was closed before it had ever truly been opened. Henderson's glance at the plaque on the wall donated by the Lawson family said it all. Karen owned the scoreboard, the meetings, and him. He looked at us, a hint of apology in his tired eyes. District policy requires 2 staff witnesses before discipline. Henderson murmured, eyes on the Lawson plaque. Given the conflicting accounts, he said, the corporate jargon is shield against responsibility. There's not much more the school can do. We'll consider the matter resolved. Resolved. My 8-year-old daughter was assaulted, and the matter was resolved. Karen Lawson gave us a final, triumphant smirk. I'm so glad we could all be reasonable about this, she said. She turned and walked out, her heels clicking on the linoleum floor, the sound of victory. We sat there for a moment in stunned silence. The system, the one that was supposed to protect kids, had been bought and paid for. It had been manipulated by a woman who would burn the whole world down to make sure her son never had to face the consequences of his actions. We left the principal's office knowing one thing for sure. The school wasn't going to help. The police would call it a he said, she said civil matter. Especially with 4 witnesses backing Tyler's story, we were on our own, and the first shots from Karen's HOA. Ken and the next phase of her campaign to silence and intimidate us were about to land right on our doorstep. The first letter arrived 2 days later. It was crisp, official, tucked into our mailbox like a little paper viper. The letterhead was embossed with the logo of our neighborhood, the estates at Serene Lake. There was nothing serene about it. It was a declaration of war printed on expensive, cream-colored cardstock. The subject line read, "Notice of violation and imposed fine," according to the letter. Signed with a flourish by one Karen Lawson, President. We were in breach of Covenant 4.7b, lawn maintenance and aesthetic standards. Our grass was apparently a quarter of an inch too high. A quarter of an inch. I went outside and stared at my lawn. It looked fine. It looked like every other lawn on the block. But attached to the notice was a close-up shot of a single blade of grass next to a ruler. The blade clearly exceeded the 3-inch maximum height mandated by the HOA bylaws. It's a document thicker than most dictionaries, and twice as boring. The photo was ridiculous. The angle was so low, the photographer must have been lying on their stomach. It was petty. It was targeted. It was a $100 fine. Listening to her story was like swallowing broken glass. Every word was a sharp edge in my throat. The casual, thoughtless cruelty of it was staggering. It wasn't a simple accident. It was bullying. It was a power trip executed by a pack of boys who felt entitled to the very ground she walked on. Sam listened without interrupting. Her face a mask of calm, but I could see the muscle ticking in her jaw. When Lily was done, Sam just hugged her. "You were very brave," she whispered. "You did nothing wrong." The next morning, we were in the principal's office. The school nurse had called us. Lily had mentioned the incident to her teacher, and protocol had to be followed. The nurse's report was clinical, detached, abrasions consistent with a fall on a gravel surface, student reports being pushed by another student. It was factual. It was useless. So we drove to urgent care, concussion protocol, abrasions documented, the principal, a man named Mr. Henderson, with a perpetually worried expression and a tie that was always slightly askew, wrung his hands. He looked like a man who desperately wanted to be anywhere else. "We take these matters very seriously," he said, the words sounding hollow and rehearsed. He had a file open on his desk, Cleely's file, and another one next to it, Tyler Lawson's. I could see the name clipped to the top. "So what happens now?" I asked. "You'll pull the bus loop and SLAC cameras, right?" Henderson cleared his throat. "Well, it's a complicated situation. It's one student's word against 4 others. 4 others who were standing over my daughter with a baseball bat," Sam added, her voice level. "Yes, well, the bat," Henderson stammered. "Tyler is on the baseball team. He often carries his equipment with him. He was already making excuses. He was already building an off-ramp for the Lawson boy." And then, as if on cue, the office door opened. Karen Lawson swept in. She wasn't invited. She hadn't been called. She just appeared a vision in a tailored pantsuit, carrying a designer handbag that could probably fund the school's entire arts program for a year. She smiled graciously at Mr. Henderson, a smile that didn't reach her cold, calculating eyes. "Mr. Henderson, so sorry to interrupt," she began, her voice smooth as silk. "I heard there was a little misunderstanding about my Tyler yesterday. I wanted to clear the air." She turned her gaze on me and Sam. "And I wanted to apologize if your daughter was frightened. She's a very sensitive girl, isn't she?" The implication was clear. Lily was weak. Lily was a liar. She proceeded to dismantle our reality with terrifying precision. She produced written statements from Tyler's 3 friends. All typed, all signed, all telling the exact same story. They were practicing swings. Lily ran between them unexpectedly. She tripped over her own feet. They were all very concerned for her well-being. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. A work of fiction so complete, so internally consistent. It was almost believable if you hadn't seen the look on those boys' faces. If you hadn't heard the story from your own child. Karen's smile tightened. She looked at Sam. Her eyes flicked to the bat lying in the gravel, and back to Sam. She chose to ignore it the way you ignore a broken window if you're the one who threw the rock. "I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding. Boys will be boys after all." Sam stood up slowly. She looked Karen Lawson dead in the eye. "Your boy," she said, her voice dangerously calm, "stood over my daughter with a baseball bat after he and his friends knocked her to the ground. There is no misunderstanding. Karen's mask of polite concern dropped. A flicker of something hard and cold replaced it. "I think you're mistaken," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "My son would never do such a thing. Perhaps your daughter is clumsy." She put a protective hand on Tyler's shoulder, pulling him back toward the car, as if shielding him from our baseless accusations. She was already spinning the story, rewriting the reality that had unfolded seconds before. She was building a wall around her son, brick by brick. I looked from her smug face to my daughter, who was now clutching Sam's leg, a raw scrape blooming on her cheek. The world felt off-kilter. The rules I thought we all lived, but don't hurt kids. Take responsibility for your actions had just been casually tossed aside. Karen Lawson operated under a different set of bylaws, her own. She drew a line in the gravel that day, right there between her perfect son and my injured daughter. She had absolutely no idea my wife was an expert in crossing enemy lines, and that I was the guy who would happily hold the map, pack the lunch, and document the entire invasion. This wasn't over. It was the first sentence of a very long, very ugly chapter. And we were about to write it together. We took Lily home. The world outside our front door faded into a muffled hum. Inside, it was all about our daughter. Sam, with the calm efficiency of a field medic, cleaned the scrapes on her knees and the raw patch on her cheek. She put a small, colorful bandage on it, one with cartoon unicorns. Lily chose it herself. It was a tiny act of control in a situation where she'd had none. I made her a cup of hot chocolate, extra marshmallows, the universal dad remedy for all of life's injustices. She sat on the couch, wrapped in her favorite fuzzy blanket, and told us what happened. Her voice was small, shaky. She'd been walking, humming a song from a movie she loved. Tyler and his friends blocked the path. They were tossing the bat back and forth. She tried to walk around them. Tyler stepped in front of her. He said something mean about her bright pink shoes. She told him to leave her alone. He laughed. He swung the bat, not at her, but near her, just to scare her. He told her the road was for varsity players, not for little kids. Then he nudged her with the end of the bat. Not hard, just a little push in the ribs, but it was enough to make an 8-year-old lose her balance on the loose gravel. She went down hard. "My head hurts," Lily whispered. She stumbled from the nudge, and her head smashed into the gravel with a sharp crack. Tyler tightened his grip on the bat like he was considering another swing, standing over her as she blinked in pain. The scrape on her cheek wasn't from the fall. It was from one of the other boys who kicked a little spray of gravel in her face as she tried to get up. They were laughing when Sam arrived. They saw it. Their smirks faltered. Tyler Lawson, to his credit, tried to hold his ground. One of the boys hissed, "Text your mom." Now, Tyler's thumbs flew. 30 seconds later, the cavalry in a white SUV, he puffed out his chest. "We were just playing." Lady Sam didn't break stride. She stopped 5 feet out. "You're done playing," she said. Her eyes never left Tyler's. "Drop the bat." He hesitated, a flicker of defiance in his eyes. He looked to his friends for support, but they were already backing away, their bravado evaporating under her gaze. I was coming up behind them now, my breath ragged, a hot, ugly rage building in my chest. "Drop it," Sam said again, her voice even lower. Even colder, Tyler finally seemed to register exactly who he was facing. Former Army, zero bluff, all business. She shifted her stance, shoulders squared. He'd have to go through her to get another swing. It was the kind of tone that promised consequences swift, efficient, and deeply unpleasant. Tyler's grip loosened. The bat thudded onto the gravel. Far down the road, 2 patrol cars rolled past, lights flashing from a different call. Neighbors had phoned in, then kept going without stopping. A cloud of dust puffed up around it. Sam knelt beside Lily, her movements fluid and precise. She checked her over, her hands gentle, her voice a soft murmur I couldn't hear. Lily was crying now, quiet, hitching sobs. I reached them, my shadow falling over the scene. I looked at Tyler and he couldn't meet my eyes. He was just a boy, I realized, a stupid, arrogant boy who had made a catastrophic mistake. But that didn't stop the fire in my gut. Then another car pulled up. A pristine white luxury SUV, the kind that probably costs more than my college education. The driver's side door opened, and out stepped Karen Lawson, the queen bee herself, HOA president. Polished, perfect blonde hair that defied humidity. A smile that was all teeth and no warmth. She surveyed the scene, her eyes flicking from her son to Lily on the ground, to Sam, and finally to me. There was no concern in her expression, no alarm, just annoyance. As if we were a traffic jam she had to navigate. "Tyler, what's going on here?" she asked, her voice a smooth, calculated purr. "These people seem upset." Tyler mumbled something about an accident, about Lily falling. I recently faced every parent's worst nightmare. The HOA president's son threatened my little girl with a bat while she was face down on the gravel. And his excuse? He said she's clumsy and tripped on her own. Funny thing is, my temper stumbled, but my wife didn't when they learned who she is. Let me start from the beginning. Tuesdays are supposed to be boring. They're the day of the week that just shows up for work, does its job, and goes home. No drama, no flair, just a solid, dependable, beige kind of day. This Tuesday, however, decided to wear a red dress and light a stick of dynamite. It started with the sound of my daughter Lily, laughing. That sound is the baseline of my world. It's the background music that tells me everything is okay. She was 8 years old, all pigtails and skinned knees, and she was walking home from her friend's house just 2 doors down. Our little neighborhood, with its manicured lawns and identical mailboxes, was supposed to be a safe zone, a bubble. That's what we paid the ridiculous homeowners association fees for. Safety, scenery, and the soul-crushing certainty that your neighbor couldn't paint their house a slightly different shade of taupe without a notarized letter from God himself. I was in the garage, trying to figure out why the lawnmower was making a sound like a dying goose when the laughter stopped. It didn't fade. It was cut off. A switch was flipped. The silence that followed was loud. It was heavy. My wife Sam was in the kitchen, probably field stripping the toaster for a routine cleaning. She heard it too. She moves with an economy of motion I've always envied. Former Army. She doesn't rush. She arrives. By the time I dropped the wrench and got to the end of our driveway, she was already halfway down the gravel road. Her stride long and purposeful, and that's when I saw it. The image burned into my brain like a cattle brand. Lily was on the ground, a small heap of pink t-shirt and denim shorts. Standing over her were 4 boys, teenagers, varsity jackets, smug expressions. The kind of casual cruelty that only comes from kids who have never been told no in their entire lives. One of them, the biggest one, was Tyler Lawson. And in his hand, held loosely like it was an extension of his arm, was a metal baseball bat. He wasn't holding it like he was about to play a game. He was holding it like a club. He slammed the bat into the gravel inches from her head. Pebbles jumped. He never touched her with the bat, just close enough to scare. He choked up on the handle and lifted the bat chest high over Lily until Sam cut his line. The other 3 were his backup singers, a quartet of pimply entitled thugs. 2 of them carried bats, 2 props, and a bad play. But only Tyler closed on Lily. The air went still. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the sudden, terrifying silence. The world narrowed to that one awful picture, my little girl on the ground, 4 giants looming over her, and a baseball bat. I started running. My legs felt like they were churning through wet cement. Every instinct screamed, a primal roar in the back of my skull. But Sam, as always, was faster. She was calmer. She was better. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. Her voice, when it came, was flat and cold. It cut through the thick afternoon air like a shard of glass. Get away from her. It wasn't a request. It was a command structure change. The boys flinched. They turned. And for the first time, they seemed to notice the woman approaching them. Sam's stride was steady, her jaw set, her posture pure combat discipline. She looked like a soldier closing distance on a target, She moved like a decision already made.